What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about 5 things that I think Silent Hill 2's remake could do better than the original. Now, before we get too far in, I do just want to start by saying I think the original game is a very, very good game, if not a masterpiece. Is it a perfect game? The answer is, at least in my opinion, no. I do think there's a couple things that if you had a second try at, right, you could improve upon theoretically. Not saying Silent Hill 2 Remake will improve, just that they could improve, right? So I got 5 things here, and some of these are things they've actually emphasized, right? So it's not necessarily things you haven't heard before, but we'll see if they can nail any of these. We'll see if they can nail any of these better than others, and we'll go from there. But quick plug, just really fast, I have a third channel. It's called Podcast Now Back to the Past. I do retrospective videos. Probably in about 2 weeks, about the first week of October, I actually replayed Silent Hill 2 on PC, the enhanced mod, and I did a retrospective video on it. So just stay tuned to the Podcast Now network here, and you'll see that video out in a few weeks, okay? So let's start at number 1, kind of an open one in combat. Now, this is something that you can clearly tell they've overhauled, and they've done some things. And, you know, I would say when they first showed combat with the remake, there was a little bit of pushback to it. I will say, again, and I'm probably going to say this a lot in this video, because I did just replay this a month ago, it's very fresh in my head, right? The experience of playing the original Silent Hill 2. Combat is something you'd like to see improve. Now, here's the deal, right? They got to be careful to kind of keep the soul of it intact, in which James is not a mercenary. This is not a guy that should know how to wield these weapons as a master martial artist, right? So they have a dodge type mechanic, which is, I would say, a natural thing. If you're a human being, right, you're being attacked, you're going to flinch. I'm a martial artist myself, so I feel like that's reasonable, right? You're going to move around and whatnot. But you might not be well trained. You're not going to be a master at it. So kind of finding that blend of just striking a little bit more fluid and, not as rigid and slow as the original, but he still kind of has to have that core, right? You can't make him this martial arts expert where he's all of a sudden a pipe wielding, master, right? So it is a tough blend, but I do think, okay, if you replay Silent Hill 2, there is a room to improve that combat. I don't think that combat is perfect. I feel like it is probably one of the most afterthought type things in that game. That's not really the central focus of it. And now we'll kind of stick to the same family of improvements for number 2, boss fights. So to kind of get a little bit more specific, right? There's going to be many, hand-to-hand single person or single enemy encounters throughout the game, obviously, right? But there's a couple boss fights in Silent Hill 2. And now I think in terms of the tension and even how the environment looks, how the enemies look, things like that you don't touch, right? In fact, that's where you kind of got people mad with some of the models and whatnot of the characters in Silent Hill 2 Remake. We've seen some snippets of the Pyramid Head fight, right? And I will say, again, replaying it, that Pyramid Head, there's a couple of them, right? You can definitely improve the Pyramid Head fight, especially the very first one, the one where he goes down the stairs with the water kind of situation. That is a small room, and you're pretty much just going corner to corner, right? There's really, there is tension because you can't really hurt him. You're almost just buying time and dealing enough kind of fake damage for him to leave and move on to the next thing, right? So again, the kind of atmosphere of it, you don't really want to change. But as we've seen from the snippets of gameplay, you can make it a little bit more actiony. You can kind of make it more dynamic with things Pyramid Head striking and it blowing up barrels and stuff. You can kind of increase that part while keeping that tension, while keeping he's very dangerous. You're not really beating him. You're kind of just biding time. Or you can keep that feel, but actually, make the boss fight better. And that's just one example. Honestly, all the boss fights are like that. They're not difficult. They're something where you kind of just run to one area, shoot, move to the next area, within the same room, really, right? Shoot again and go from there. That's really all that it is. And that kind of stuff can be improved and looks like it's going to be. Okay, the next part, which is again something that they have emphasized, is opening up the world. Now, I struggle to say you can make the world better in Silent Hill. That's a tough one, right? Again, I would actually argue the atmosphere, the fog, the allure of what Silent Hill is. that kind of stuff, like, you can only attempt to replicate it, right? You can't necessarily beat it. I mean, maybe with like modern technology, but you got to be careful. Like, the fog has to be just right. That was a lot of the problems with some of the different editions of Silent Hill 2, like the PS3 one, right? Like, the fog actually didn't look right. The lighting didn't look right. So those things are kind of tough. What I'm talking about here is just kind of making it a more complete experience, right? And we've talked about this before, just opening up doors, opening up buildings that were inaccessible in the base game. That's pretty much it. A lot of the base game, you can't go in. I can't even tell you how many apartment, rooms are, inaccessible. You can't open them, or you're going around the town, and, it's cool, like, on the exterior, right? Like, it's cool to be there. And again, that's the kind of stuff that you just have to capture. Again, you have to basically do the same thing. But, like, can we enter some of these places? And the answer is, again, yes, that is something that they've talked about. And again, the only drawback there is you don't want to change, like, the tone of Silent Hill. You can open it up more, but you don't really want to change that. The fourth thing is the camera. Now, like, clearly the camera work has been completely reworked, which I can very much get behind. It's been forever. Like, I don't even remember when I played Silent Hill 2. It was probably 12, 13 years ago. But so replaying it, I was like, holy dear God. Like, not only do I just prefer, and I mean, I guess I know, like, it makes it a little bit more Resident Evil. Like, I know some people aren't really, for that. Maybe like the purists out there. I can respect that. I honestly, I get that to a degree. But I will say, like, even if you liked the more top-down, like, camera of the original Silent Hill 2, the way that it swapped was just horrible. I mean, like, there were times you could be running in a hallway and not know where you're going because the camera wasn't ready to change on you yet, or sometimes it would get stuck, and like, that just is, it's unacceptable now. It could be acceptable in 2001 or whatever. We take for granted the lighting in games, the camera work. Like, these are things that we kind of just expect to be good, like, just baseline good all the time. You can't have a situation like the original. So you're not going to, because the camera has completely been redone anyway, you know what I mean? So I didn't want to spend too much time on this one. But it's something that, we'll see how people get along with it, because maybe, again, it's too similar to a different game or whatever. And the final one, much like the opening up kind of the world, how about opening up the backstory? Now, this is where you get very sensitive. And I actually, again, like, I can respect this, because one of my biggest takeaways upon replaying it is how cool the storytelling is. Not just the story itself, not just the characters themselves, but how they tell the story. It's just something you don't really get from a lot of games, right? Kind of being like drip-fed stuff and environmental kind of storytelling, and kind of piecing things together, almost like piecing themes together, because they kind of throw a theme at you. Honestly, like, pick any character, right? Like Angela. And I don't know if I need them to, like, outright tell me these stories, right? But, like, Angela's story, you can know some of it, or you can maybe know all of it, right? If maybe you missed a couple of things, maybe you go online, maybe you find, like, the whole wiki of her. But go down the list, like Angela, Eddie, Laura, like, any of these characters. Again, it's tough because the way the game does it, I think, is very, like, systematic, and you don't really want to mess with that machine. Even just what's going on with Maria and Mary and James and all that stuff, like, that's something you don't really want to open up more of earlier, right? Because it doesn't make sense to do that. But I think you can kind of expand and maybe even give us an extra scene with some of these characters, not to spell things out, but just to kind of enhance the main themes that are already there. Like, all of them, Angela has a theme, right? Like, we can all agree on that. Eddie has a theme. They all have themes. You can expand that theme without changing the theme, and I would like that to happen, basically, in this game. So, there's my 5. You let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.